Welcome to the Ask for Football Army Football Show. The Army Football Show is an insider's guide for cadets, old grads, and college football fans to follow the Army team throughout their season as they seek to beat Navy and claim the Commander-in-Chief's trophy. Ask for Football is brought to you by our sponsor, BuyerBarn.com. BuyerBarn.com is the world's first online platform for online sales and auctions of farm animals. That's BuyerBarn.com. Don't forget to follow Ask for Football on all social media platforms or sign up for our mailing list at askforfootball.com/subscribe. Everyone, now we're at a special part of our show today. We're very lucky to have Army Athletic Director Mike Buddie here with us. Mr. Buddie, first of all, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, appreciate it, man. I appreciate all you guys do for the program. It's great to be on with you.
Hey, and just want to start out, a few things have changed since the last time we talked. I think the last time we talked was probably right coming out of the COVID season. You had some lessons learned you were sharing with us. That was very interesting. The Michie Stadium Preservation Project was just taking root. And so I'm sure we'll get an update on that today. But big thing that sort of changed is that we have a new superintendent, similar to having a new president at any other school. How has that transition been for you, and what's it like working with the new super?
Yeah, so I'll tell you what, General Gillen has been a phenomenal leader. I had a great relationship with General Williams, former football player. Certainly, you talk about COVID, having the soup at the time, who was a former football player and understood kind of what those guys go through during such an unusual time of COVID was really helpful. And, people around here were a little bit nervous because anytime you get a former commandant that's coming back as a soup, I think everybody's sphincter gets a little bit tight, thinking, well, is he going to come in here with a comm hat and looking at the world through commandant lenses? And I wasn't here when he was a comm, but I'll tell you, he's a hell of a superintendent. And, what I've learned is you don't get 3 stars without being approachable, down to earth, really, really smart, and committed to leadership and excellence and all the things that Jeff Munkin and all of our coaches are committed to. And so it's been really seamless. I mean, he comes in, he loves football. He played a little bit early on his plebe year. And he'll tell you, he kind of realized I either get to play football or I'm going to graduate from West Point. I probably can't do both. And so to have that experience in his background really humanizes it. He understands that it's not easy getting up every day as an Army football player or volleyball player or softball player for that matter. Very supportive. He's got clear expectations. He's got high standards and very committed to discipline. He's a beast of a physical person. In his mid-50s, he could still kill you with his bare hands. So he's been awesome. The transition's been really smooth. Coaches have really taken to his leadership, and he's all in to beat Navy in every complete facet possible.
That's really good to hear. I was there when he was the commandant, and as a recipient of some of his high standards and discipline, I'm glad the transition went well. So I figure we'll start it off. We'll just kind of go sport by sport. We'll have some general questions for you at the end. We're going to hit some of the major sports, some of the ones that have had more sort of athletic director intervention that maybe people have questions about. But we'll start with baseball. It seems like the switch to the new head coach, Chris Trax, has been seamless. Very good first year, best one in a long time for a new head coach. There were some rumors that we had some very high-profile names for that job on that list. What made Coach Trax the right fit for Army baseball?
Well, several things, and he's been phenomenal. I think we're up 8-2 in the 3rd inning right now as we're recording. Nation's longest winning streak right now, 11 games, going for 12 today.
Awesome.
I'll say this: I can't imagine the candidate pool when Boo Corrigan was doing the search previously, where the team was kind of like middling. I give Jim Foster a lot of credit. When you're coming off back-to-back championships, you get a high quality of interest in your job. You ask what made Chris the best fit, and truly fit is the word. It's kind of a buzzword. I actually hate it. But Chris was here as an assistant coach. And so he had a little bit of how do you recruit? What's the recruiting pitch to get kids to come to West Point? He's very well respected. I came up in the ACC. I talked to a lot of ACC coaches. I didn't know this going into the search, but several of them had offered Chris, double his salary to come be associate head coaches on their staffs at some really big, reputable ACC schools. And Chris was content. He likes this part of the country. He's married to Dave McGarrity's daughter, one of Dave McGarrity's daughters. So he knows
Wow.
what it was like to be at West Point, right? You're
That's
married.
awesome.
Your father-in-law is, crazy Dave, who's lives and dies with every win, and so all those things. And then he just got this demeanor. Coach Foster was very demanding, kind of high-strung, really high expectations, and Chris is much more chill. To be clear, he does not. He's not a pushover, but it's just a different message. Oftentimes the message is the same, but sometimes the way it's delivered can resonate more or less. So, and let's be clear, the cupboard wasn't empty. I mean, our best pitcher transferred to Virginia, and he's killing it. He's the best pitcher in the ACC, I think. And Chris kind of just came in and kept the ball rolling. Again, Coach Foster left him a really nice group of core athletes, and our offense has been a pleasant surprise. But what really is, we weren't sure how deep our pitching was going to be, and Chris is a pitching guy, and so he's been really good working with our young people, and so far so good, knock on wood. But the Patriot League, I'm still on the NCAA baseball committee. It's rare that a team would get an at-large berth, so you either win the tournament or you don't. And so that's a lot of pressure for a team like ours that clearly I think has risen towards the top of taking control of the league. We'll finish, as long as we hold on today, we'll finish in first place regular season, but Navy's not too far behind, and anything can happen in tournament baseball.
Absolutely. And you mentioned that you're on the NCAA baseball committee. I wanted to ask you about that. So you're the chair last year. I believe someone else has taken over this year as chair. You had a rather contentious decision to make as a committee last year, where you put in Ole Miss over NC State. NC State wasn't too happy about it. Your predecessor might have had a few things to say, but Ole Miss comes around, they end up winning the entire tournament. So how was that process? What is it like to be a former NCAA baseball player and now you're on the committee?
Well, I love being on the committee because it's really important that you have people who understand baseball in the room. And you're right. I mean, Boo Corrigan called me, the NC State baseball coach who I've known for 20 years. It shows you how important it is to get that opportunity. And truly, they're just fighting like hell for their kids to have opportunity. And, that's the role of the chair, right? I mean, this year, Boo was the chair of the college football playoff. And so he sat in that seat where there's always going to be people disappointed. Ironically, yeah, it's the guy who literally sat in this office that had to call and express his displeasure. But, he's a first-class guy. He did it in a first-class rate. And, Ole Miss kind of made us look like maybe we knew what we were doing by running the table and winning the national championship. We certainly didn't expect that. But, there's no way to prove that NC State wouldn't have done it. And so those are brutal conversations. There's 10 grown-ups. We all get one vote. And when you set the field, and then, the kids get the opportunity to play. And so what makes it really heartbreaking in this case, it was NC State was one of the first four out, and we'll never know if they would have been able to make a deep run. And we take that. I mean, that's crushing. Like I was in that seat, man. I played at Wake Forest and never got to play in the NCAA regionals. And that's hard to swallow. So, you can always do more. There's a game here, a game there, but baseball's so goofy. You can lose to Elon on a Tuesday, and then you go to NC State and you sweep them on the weekend. And it doesn't mean that Elon's better than NC State, but there's just these crazy. It's a weird sport where there's so many games played. It's hard to evaluate West Coast teams versus Southern teams, and really difficult to do Northern teams because you don't get to play home games until April a lot of time because the weather doesn't permit it. So I love being on the committee. It's a tough job. It's a thankless job oftentimes, but much like politics today, if you just throw up your hands and walk away, somebody else is going to do the job. And if they're not as capable or as qualified as you are, then you've done a misjustice. So happy to serve in that capacity.
Last baseball question. We know that you were a professional baseball pitcher. The pitching clock, in my opinion, has made the game 200% more watchable at least. How much harder would it be to pitch on a pitching clock?
For me, not at all. I was all about pace. I got tired of waiting on batters to get in the batter's box. So I'm with you, man. I think it's great. It's unfortunate there have been some goofy,
sure,
full count, you walk in or run type of things. But, it's not going to take long for pitchers and hitters both to realize, hey, we just got to speed it up. And the games will be 20, 30, 40 minutes shorter, and that'll be good for everybody.
I don't care that the games are shorter, but it's just there's more baseball occurring in the allotted time. And as a fan, man, it is 1,000% better. It is so much better. Anyway, I'll let that go. James, go back. You got it.
Yeah. All right. So I think that wraps up baseball. We'll move on to basketball. Obviously, Coach Traversy just completed her second year now. She's certainly doing well to replace Coach McGarity. That was the coach when I was there. It was always fun to go to the women's games and see how red his face got. But we have a new women's basketball coach. She's got 2 stars against Navy, an incredible win this year at the last second off of a dribble off the foot. And so they secure the star in a huge comeback. Men's basketball, a little bit different story. They lose the pair to Navy this year, make it to the semifinals again. One of the things that I love about having an AD that takes action, I keep a list because this is now, I think, the 3rd or 4th time we've gotten to interview you. And so as things come up, I write them down so I don't forget to ask them. And basketball had been on my list for about two of these iterations. I didn't get to ask you last time, but I wanted to ask you this time where you thought the direction of the program was going. You made that pretty clear about a month ago when you brought in a new coach, Kevin Kuick. There's the obvious connection there with being an Army veteran and not to use your hated buzzword again, but what makes him the right fit here? Why did you go with him?
Well, there's a lot of reasons. Mentors are really important. Jeff Monken learned from Paul Johnson, who's widely regarded as, if you're going to run that offense, he's the guy to learn it from. He's also a first-class human being, other than the stink of Navy a little bit. That's who Monk learned from, and so that matters. That's important. Kevin Kuick coached under Thad Matta, Brad Stevens, Bob McKillop, and Archie Manning. All pretty good basketball coaches, really good basketball programs. Davidson is not a walk in the park. They have really high academic standards. They don't treat their athletes any different. So Steph Curry, his freshman roommate, might have been Rob. Like he didn't get to room with his other point guard.
Nice.
Wake Forest, like all the baseball players got to room together. So that was important. And James, when you're trying to convince people to come to West Point, there's a component of service. And the fact that this dude went to Notre Dame on ROTC, graduated summa cum laude in mechanical engineering, was class president, and instead of going to get a job as a mechanical engineer making 6 figures, decided I'm going to use my ROTC and serve my country. Multiple times he had opportunities to get out, stayed in for 10 years while trying to be a Division I head coach. And he's had some things that you can read about. His fiance was killed in a plane crash, and he fought the FAA. And if you're willing to fight the FAA over 5 years while being a Division I head coach and ultimately kind of winning against the FAA, like, I got to think that you'll figure out a way to be successful on the hardwoods. And so when I look at Joe Alberici and I look at Michelle Tumalo and I look at Jeff Monken, like some of our successful coaches, the qualities that they have is they refuse to give up at any given point. Sometimes it drives me crazy. Coach Monken wants X, A, B, and C, and you give him A, B, and he's just like, that's great, thank you, I'm appreciative, but let's figure out a way to get C, or let's create something that's very similar that we can get approved. And that's why he's successful. And so, when I looked at Kevin and you meet him, his energy, his optimism, and then just that history of like, hey, if it needs to happen, I'm going to figure out a way to make it happen, and I'm not going to quit until it does. Those types of people and that type of attitude usually does well at West Point. He's never been a head coach, so until you're the dude calling timeouts, there's always going to be a little bit of mystery. But But I just think, Jimmy, much like Jim Foster, left the program in a really good spot, and it's a really good opportunity. Even though we're probably going to lose both of our freshmen to the transfer portal, there's still, the cupboard is not bare, and the Patriot League just got 4 new head coaches. Navy just graduated 7 of their 8 most minutes. And so this is not, you ask our seniors, Jalen Rucker, Charlie Peterson, and several others, we're like, hey, this isn't a rebuild. We're not going to hire somebody so that we'll be good in 2027, because that doesn't do you any good. Like, we want to be good now. And that's the expectation. And Kevin has hit the ground running. We're really excited.
So you mentioned Coach Allen and how he left the program in a good spot. This was probably the highest profile decision that you've made it as an athletic director at any point in your career. Got a lot of criticism from some people that I thought was unfair. How did you handle that sort of high profile criticism? What steps did you take that you maybe thought that their criticism wasn't fair?
Well, listen, if you're a leader in this day and age, like, you're going to get criticized. I think my background is a kind of a shitty Major League Baseball player. I'm used to getting a lot of criticism in a very, very,
especially in New York, right?
That's right. I mean, I pitched in the Bronx, so you don't think the Boston Red Sox fans let me know what they thought about me as a pitcher? Criticism's part of it, right? I love Jimmy Allen. Jimmy loved these cadets, but what people talk about is, look at the record. Well, I will say this vaguely and just leave it there. When we evaluate our coaches, whether it's baseball, whether it's basketball, whether it's football, wins and losses is part of it, but it's not everything. Like, there's a lot that goes into being a successful coach at West Point, and it involves the culture of the program and developing character and leadership and all that matters, and making sure that the guys are having, or the girls are having fun, and having an outlet and loving the game. And so all of those factors go into how we evaluate our coaches. It's not just wins and losses, probably more so than any other institution in the country, where wins and losses matter a lot here, but it's not the only thing that we look at.
I got to say, Mike, you've definitely earned the benefit of the doubt as far as hiring these coaches go. And I'll use the swim and dive program as an example, because I was personally a little skeptical when you brought in Coach Nigro, not because of his background, but just because, honestly, the program had been sort of in the dirt for so long that I found myself wondering, is this where we were? Like, I didn't think, taking Navy aside, I didn't think the program was bad. I just thought that they had got stuck. But clearly we could do better. And congratulations on winning. And I'll just let you have the floor for a minute there.
Well, I appreciate it. I certainly hear plenty when I don't deserve the benefit of the doubt. I appreciate you. I will tell you, the credit goes to Brant Nigro and the staff that he's assembled, because it's tough to beat a bunch of squids who live in the water. And when we hired him, I talked to Brant and I said, listen, we're going to give you a 5-year contract. And by the end of year 4, we should be getting close. We should be competitive and thinking about, okay, this next contract cycle, like, it's no longer, hey, you're here to be competitive. We're going to win. And we didn't even get through year 3. And he broke a 32-year losing streak in men's swimming and diving to beat them. And then, the women are catching up pretty quickly too. So I appreciate you pointing that out. Brant's another one of those guys, like, he's in my office a lot, and it's, hey, here's what I need, and here's why it's important.
Sure.
And when you get results, it makes it easy to find ways to get to yes for those guys. And shoot, man, 32 years, it was a celebration worth being in. I jumped in the pool. They told me afterwards.
I saw that.
I watched, I gotta confess, I watched that every minute of that meet on TV. So
the other great part about that men's swimming program in particular, but I think the women's too, is when you look at that meet against Navy, the percentage of point scorers that are his recruits, that are plebes and yucks, it's greater than, I want to say 60%. I did the math on it at one point. Like, to have a program that ends a 32-year streak and most of your points are coming from people that aren't even halfway done with the academy yet really says something about that coach. So,
yeah, I appreciate you pointing that out. And it was not a smooth transition for him. It was
sure. But he came in and then we had COVID immediately.
That's right. And he came in and said, hey, if you're here, to swim on the weekends and get out of Sammy, you're probably in for a rude awakening. I'm here because I want to win. Here's a perfect example. Our swimming and diving team came back with the rest of the core in January.
Wow.
Our wrestling team comes back on January 1st. Our hockey team comes back on January 1st, and they get right back into training to get ready. And the swim team had kind of just voted and said, hey, we'd rather have a little extra vacation.
That's nuts.
That'd have been my vote in college too. I'm not, but Coach Nigro said that's exactly why we don't beat Navy. I mean, we either need to get serious and be a Division I swimming program, or let's take a kick up our feet and try to finish middle of the pack. And to their credit, the young kids that he's brought in, they're bought in, and the culture has completely changed.
And he's now gotten some votes for top 25 in swimming, which is, crazy to think that Army's getting top 25 votes this year, but that's the world we live in. Anything else with swim and dive, Dan?
No, I'm done. I will say I thought they were going to win the Patriot League championship, and I have thought the team was about where the football team was in 2016, which is kind of amazing, really. So I'm eager to see where they go next year.
Me too.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get into the big one. Football is next. So we put out a feeler to our First D Club members, asked them who they thought, if they had any questions. And the one question that was most asked was about joining a conference. So number one, have any conferences reached out since the last time we spoke? And then the other sort of half of that question is, what sort of, I know you said that you value Army's independence. I think that Army as an institution does too. What sort of conditions do you see that would lead to Army joining a conference?
Yeah, great question. I'll try to be pretty transparent here. The shifting landscape of college football and college athletics in general, it's those external factors. We still value our independence. For example, if the college football playoff expands, which it's going to, the way the proposal is written is it's the 5 Power 5 conference champions, and then the next highest ranked conference champion, and then the next 6 highest ranked teams. So essentially what they're saying is the Power 5 conference champs all get in, and then whatever group of 5 team that's the highest ranked, right? Whether it's the Sun Belt champ, the MAC champ, the American champ. Well, that means Army as an independent. It used to be if we were just the highest ranked independent, I thought, or the highest ranked group of 5, you might get that last spot. But now they're saying it's the highest ranked group of 5 conference champion. So we don't have an avenue other than we have to be ranked in the top 12 in the country, which is going to be difficult to do when teams like Tennessee and others decide, I know we had a contract, but we're not going to play you.
Yeah.
And by the way, if I'm the AD at Tennessee, I'm making the same decision. Playing Army is a really difficult proposition for Power 5 teams, because if you beat us, you're supposed to, and it ain't going to be easy to beat us. And if you don't beat us, it's, the world has ended, Armageddon set in. So, and let me be clear, Jeff Monken and Mike Buddie and Steve Gilland, we want opportunity to be the best at everything that we do. And so we want to be in the college football playoff. And so if the only way that we get there, and this is crystal clear, and there's no other opportunity by the year 2027 for us to get to the college football playoff, other than to join a group of 5 league and win it, I think we'd be crazy not to consider it. Not to mention the things that go along with that college football playoff, which is a big cut of the money that's going to exponentially grow. They think about $450 million of new money will come in with the expansion. Those are dollars that I need so that our rugby program can keep operating and winning national championships, and our softball team and our volleyball team can continue to keep pace as travel costs and airplane jet fuel and buses, all those costs are rising. So the other question, James, has anybody called me from a conference? No, but it's my job after every fiscal year to sit back and say, hey, are we doing everything to maximize revenue? And we do that through Army Navy games, and we do that through game guarantees, and we do it through partnerships with Nike and CBS and Learfield. And so, I think I use the word holistic all the time. I do a holistic review of our department, and revenue matters. It's not the only thing. I mean, if revenue was the only thing that mattered, Boo Corrigan would have joined a conference 10 years ago. We're no closer to joining a conference, but we're no further from joining a conference either. And anybody that sits here and pounds the fist and says, we will never, ever do X, Y, or Z, usually ends up looking pretty goofy when they end up doing precisely that. So I'll just leave it there.
All right. Well, thank you for being frank. So next football question, last announced contract that I could find had Jeff Monken at Army through 2024. Obviously contracts are private. I don't know, with the nonprofit, but is there any talk?
Should we be sweating?
Yeah. Like, is there any talk in the works of extending that contract, or what's the outlook on Coach Monken?
Hell yes.
Okay.
Yes, that is a priority. Coach is clearly the right fit to lead our young men, clearly the right fit. People, I know you guys pay attention. Coach Monken has had to make some incredibly difficult decisions on a personal and professional level. But to his credit, when he makes a decision, and let me be clear, I support him every way possible. That dude forgets more about football by the end of breakfast than I'll ever know. And so my job is to knock down every hurdle I can and put him in a position so that his vision for our program can continue to flourish. He's had to make some real tough decisions, and he's a phenomenal leader. And so, my job is to get him wrapped up, to keep him happy. He passed Coach Daly last year to be the number 2 all-time winning. And it's cool. We shifted our gears and said, hey, let's set our sights on Red Blake. Of course, Coach Monken, in his awesome sense of humor, said, yeah, I'm still like 60 wins away from Red Blake. but that's our goal, and that's where we've shifted our focus. And so I've had a lot of conversations with both he and his agent. We're making really good progress. That'll be a day. I might take the afternoon off the day we get that done, just to celebrate, because there's not a better fit for this football program than Jeff Monken, and that's for sure.
Well, if we're around when you take the day off, we'll head down to Southgate Pub and get.
Yeah, we could buy you a beer after that one. That'll be an earned beer.
I accept.
All right, moving on. Next football question. So, new slate of Army Navy games gets released: 2023 in Boston, 2024 in Washington, 25 in Baltimore, 26 in New York City, and 27 in Philadelphia. First of all, what was that process like? It's a sort of a new kind of deal for Army Navy. Haven't seen anything like this before. So what was that process like?
Well, it was a great learning experience for me. It's the first time that I've been involved in the RFP. Chet has done it, I think, 6 times. I talked to Boo Corrigan a few times just to kind of make sure that I wanted to understand it on our terms. I didn't want to just kind of listen to the folks who had been through it. It was a great experience. I mean, to have as many metropolitan areas interested that we had. I think we made 7 or 8 site visits. We went into it with a clearly true open mind. At no point did we say, hey, let's take it 5 different cities in 5 different years. We just said, hey, let's do what's best for the Corps cadets, the midshipmen. Let's make some memories for the guys who are duking it out on the field. Let's get to some parts of the country that maybe we haven't been to before. And then there's certainly, let's not sugarcoat it. There's a financial commitment that matters too, to both institutions. And it was tough. I mean, it's kind of like talking about the baseball committee. I mean, there were some cities outside of the normal footprint that truly just put a phenomenal bid together. And I remember saying to Chet Gladchuk, like, hey, if we're not going to take it outside of this Northeast footprint in this cycle, what could be done? Because these bids were so good and so competitive. But as you guys know, you got to get 8,000 young people into your stadium and into your city. And if it's by plane or train or bus or blimp, like, it's got to make financial sense. And we can't put our kids in a bus at 4 a.m. and have them, going down to North Carolina and being in a bus for 15 hours and then say, get out and walk into the football game. Like, we can't treat the Corps cadets like cattle. And so really tough decision where we landed. I'm really excited to have 5 different places in 5 years. Boston, the New England community is off the charts excited. Ticket sales are phenomenal. And so, like I said, our guys love Philadelphia. They do a phenomenal job. But I think these plebes on this football team are going to say, hey, it's pretty cool. I got to play in 4 different NFL stadiums in my time.
Yeah.
And we won all 4 times.
My wife went to Boston University, and everyone she knows has already called us for tickets. So, I know we're bringing 6, and we'll see how it goes.
So with those years, was there any thought, 2026 is going to be the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. Was there any thought to make that year in Philadelphia and the next year in New York, or how did you end up picking the order of the years?
We asked them to kind of put them in preference order. And sometimes there was World Cup conflicts or, things like that. And I'm not saying that was the case in this one. 2026 is also the 25th anniversary of the 9/11 event. So, I don't remember the specifics of it, but yeah, Philadelphia, the Declaration of Independence, there's so much of that type of history. It's I forget, my math isn't good, but there's an anniversary of the Boston Tea Party this winter that the folks in New England are going to celebrate as well. To have the Patriot games are going to be all over Boston, and it's going to be pretty awesome. But yeah, we're trying to start to think about things like that, but it doesn't supersede any of the other key components of picking a venue.
Gotcha. And that'll be the 250th of the Tea Party as well. So that'll be cool. All right. I think that covers Army Navy. Moving on to this year in football, we've sort of mentioned a little bit about Jeff Monken's decisions and how we're going to have a sort of a new offensive play style this year. Some people are going a little crazy about it, but 2023 schedule. So Ball State takes us off the schedule, a game with Georgia. You get Delaware State as a replacement. How'd that process go? And does that worry you, that these sorts of moves where Tennessee's and Ball State's removed from the schedule?
Yeah, it worries me. We're trying to address it. Again, our contract structure wasn't ideal. I think it's too easy for teams to buy out of their contracts. So every contract that we're signing now or offering now has a much bigger buyout. So teams can't do that 5-6 years down the road. The biggest concern for me isn't necessarily finding opponents. It's just when you're behind the 8 ball and you don't have much time. And it's happened to us twice now. We've had to play 2 FCS opponents in 1 year, and that's essentially, asking Coach Monk to try to find a way to get us to a bowl game with one hand tied behind his back, because one of the games that you play doesn't even count. And when you fill in like Villanova, like we did this year, Villanova is a really good team.
Yeah, absolutely.
Solid program. So that's one of those games that we're like, well, crap, now we got to play an FCS team.
Yeah.
That's our second one, so it doesn't even count if we win. And by the way, Villanova could come in here and beat you, just like other schools are saying, hey, maybe we don't want to play Army. So, yeah, Delaware State, we're excited to have the opportunity to have an HBCU come and play us. That's really important to what we're trying to do. I also think it's the right thing to do. But, it's just one fewer game than, a Ball State would have been a nice winnable group of 5 opponent. Yeah. But, it is what it is, which is another saying that I hate. But as we can say, if we're going to win 7, 8, 9 games, and we're going to knock off Missouri and take Michigan to double overtime, then we're going to have hard times people agreeing to play us. And I guess that should be a compliment. But I don't take it that way.
What does this affect next year's Ball State game at all, or that's just this year? Okay,
Just this year.
awesome. Now this is the 100th football season in Michie Stadium. Is there anything special planned along those lines?
Yeah, hot dog's gonna be half off. That's for your subscribers.
There you go.
Oh man,
So-
that's awesome.
The honest answer is no, but the PR answer is yes. We're going to knock down the east stands after graduation and start modernizing it and getting ready for the next 100 years.
Well, I was going to ask about the construction schedule because I had half expected to see the slate, front loaded with home games and with Army traveling for construction, but that's the opposite of what happened. So, how's that going to work out?
Well, originally, to be honest with you, we were going to knock down the stands at the conclusion of this season.
Okay.
But because of materials and construction, we want to make sure that it's ready for opening day 2025.
Okay.
And so we're just going to go ahead and do it after graduation and start that process, get people lined up and get them in here. And, again, to be honest, the schedule that we're playing in 2023, I bet you the last contract was probably finalized in 2016 when the Michie Stadium project was just a gleam in your parents' eye at that point. So, it's really hard to shuffle. Like you call people and say, hey, can we shift your game out of 2023? The common answer is, yeah, we can, but we can't get it back on the schedule until 2036. And then you're like, well, is it worth it? Because I'll probably be dead in 2036, and I'd really like to see, us play this opponent. That's some of the deal with Oklahoma, right? Joe
Sure.
Castiglione, like he was crushed when we had to cancel that game in 2020. He's ready to go. Their fan base at Oklahoma was so excited to come to Michie Stadium, and it's not that we didn't try to find a much quicker solution, but I think it got pushed to 2029. He's still trying to find an earlier date. We're still trying to find an earlier date, but it's just there's so many puzzle pieces and there's so much money at stake, and it's hard to find 3 or 4 different schools that are agreeable to changing anything because somebody's going to feel like they came out on the short end of the stick. So it's tough.
Yeah, I live in Oklahoma City, and I've been to a couple Sooner games, and I walk in with an Army hat, and I do not pay for beer, so I'm sure they're excited to come and visit. We'll get to the preservation project in a little bit. So 2024 schedule. So this year's finalized. The next schedule has 10 teams announced. Do we have a timeline for announcing the other 2 teams?
You're making me check my phone. I don't know what the timeline is. I know it'll be before tickets go on sale.
Fair enough. And then with that year, Syracuse has already been announced. We had mentioned last time, wondering if there's any appetite for a trophy series with Syracuse being a New York opponent. Has that been talked about at all?
No.
Gotcha.
Fair enough.
We would love to have Syracuse on our schedule regularly. Again, depending on their coach and their program, they were 6-0 at one point last year. I think we could have signed a longer deal. But here's the other, and I think I mentioned this the last time you guys had me on. We don't want to play anybody every year.
Sure, absolutely.
We want to play you in 2023 and again in 2026, and then take 3 or 4 years off and then do it all over again.
Right.
Yep.
But Syracuse is a good matchup for us. LSU.
Oh, sorry. What's that?
I said LSU type of team that they got the big, strong, fast receivers. They're air raid. That scares me a little bit from a matchup standpoint. The Wake Forest team that came in here a couple of years ago.
Yeah, absolutely.
Those are tough matchups. Syracuse, that's kind of a tough, hard-nosed, disciplined, bruiser type team. We usually line up against them fairly well. So we'll see. We're excited.
Yeah, I know my generation of cadets would get brought down to Yankee Stadium to do the flag and get paraded around. And we'd have to look at that Syracuse New York's college team, which you said you gave up a home run to somebody off of. But but I think cadets of my generation like Syracuse just a little bit less. Okay. Dartmouth in 2024 is an FCS opponent on the schedule. It's right near the 100-year anniversary of Michie Stadium. Earl Blake, obviously a big, Dartmouth coach before he comes to West Point and wins national championships. Is that why that game was scheduled? Is there a waiver out because they don't offer the requisite scholarships? What's the story with that game?
Yeah, I think Ivy Leagues get that waiver, and they're another one of those schools. Coach Buddy Tevens is a phenomenal football coach. Actually, just had a real bad cycling accident that he's trying to recover from. It's been brutal for him. But James, that's another game that I inherited. I don't know if that was strategic or not, but that's just another one of those games. Hey, if we're going to play people, let's play people that are going to class and working really hard, and hopefully that connection had something to do with it, because it is a one-off game that I just inherited. But we're excited to have that. As it turns out, the deputy athletic director here in the last 3 years is now the athletic director of Dartmouth, Mike Harity, who is really excited to come back.
And then if that does turn out to be sort of a game where we're celebrating the 100-year anniversary of Mikey, it's that home game the weekend before. Quick shameless plug before we move on. I think a lot of fans would love to see some cool throwback unis. Dan is shaking his head. I know everybody else on Twitter is going to agree with me. That's fine. But to see some 1940s era throwbacks would be awesome.
Just put them out there in the leather helmets, James.
Yeah. Oh, I mean,
face mask
helmets. Who needs those? Who needs those? I mean, but honestly, we can auction some off. It makes some money. Speaking of money, NIL, so the EA Sports, right? That's coming out here. They just delayed it another year to 2024. It's a big thing for. I mean, that's everything from recruiting to visibility. That's going to be really big. NIL money gets a little weird at academies. Is Army going to be a part of that, or how will that work?
Yeah, we're trying to get our lawyers to a point where we can just either accept a stipend that just goes back into the core of cadets as a whole, put in the mess hall, put it wherever, put it in the Firstie Club, open up a tab, something like that. We know that our cadet athletes can't specifically, personally benefit, but to your point, like that's a cool game. Like we want the Army team to be an option in that game. So we're trying to figure out a way to get to yes. I hope we can get there.
Awesome. Let's go to the Preservation Project. I'll touch on that real quick before we finish. So we mentioned going to start this year during the games after the East Stands get knocked down. Is that just going to be, Mikey Stadium is going to be at 3/4 capacity for those games?
That's exactly right. So yeah,
Okay.
we'll have to cordon off the entire east side and just use the corners and the entrance from the A lot. Our hope is that for the 2024 season, they will at least pour the concrete risers, and then we can at least have the cadets stand on that side of the stadium so that we can sell the other 3/4. For this season, we'll have to put the cadets underneath the video board, and that end of the stadium is the plan.
Okay, gotcha.
Interesting.
More on the Mikey Stadium project. Let's see. The lacrosse center. So in most of the renderings online, that lacrosse center isn't present. Is that just an artist choice, or is lacrosse getting moved? How's that going to work?
Yeah, just an artist choice. They just figured it out. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. And then something a few different fellow graduates had mentioned to me when we demolish the East Stands. Is there any way the graduates can get a hold of a piece of that concrete, either through paying for it on the Go Army eBay page or whatever?
I don't see why we wouldn't. I don't think that's part of the plan. They'll have to pay extra for the asbestos that's in it.
we got plenty of that from Hayes Gym, so I think that'll be fine.
We'll charge them double shipping and handling.
Right.
Yeah,
That's
not
gorgeous.
a bad idea.
All right. Cool.
I got one last question. So we've got men's lacrosse this weekend, women's lacrosse this weekend. Baseball's got a doubleheader and then a single, 3-game series. What are you most fired up for?
So that's an unfair question. That's like being like, hey, which one of your kids is your favorite?
All right, fair enough.
So I'm really confident in our baseball team.
Okay.
They've shown home, away, really doesn't matter. So I feel really good about them going down there to Annapolis, and they'll play well. Tanner Gresham, who's our Friday night, he's pitching as well as anybody in the country right now. So I feel really good about them, and I probably just jinxed the hell out of them. But our men's lacrosse program fell from number 7 to number 8 after just a brutally difficult. I don't even want to talk about some of the outcomes against Cornell.
Sure. They lost in the last 10 seconds of the game. It was heartbreaking.
11 seconds. Yep. Gave up a goal. The power was out. There was no clock in the stadium. There was a really tough call that went against us with about 2 minutes to go with possession. And so I hope that they're pretty angry. And so that's a grumpy team that's going to be going down there. But, just like the football series, men's lacrosse, Army Navy's, it's going to be brutal. It's going to be physical. Joe's done a phenomenal job. We lost a lot on our men's lacrosse program, and for them to be in the top 10, we lost the season opener at UMass, and then he just kind of ran the table until that Cornell game. So really excited for that one. But, Michelle Tumalo has quickly developed into like the wonderkind of Michie Stadium. For her to take that women's program that's less than 10 years old, Kristen Skyra did a phenomenal job getting them on the map and getting some respectability. But she's a angry, aggressive, phenomenally intelligent lacrosse coach, and her team has kind of taken on her personality. We were playing. Who were we playing? We were playing a non-conference game against a ranked team in women's lacrosse early.
Probably Yale.
Not Yale.
Yale or Rutgers?
Rutgers. We took an early. We were up 5-1 against Rutgers, and you could tell that Rutgers called a timeout, and they came out clearly physical. And I just got the sense that their coach said, "Hey, we need to start pushing them around a little bit." And talk about a backfire. Like it was like waking sleeping giants. Our women aren't exactly soft. And
sure.
So they tried to switch to the physical tact, which I feel like gave Coach Tumalo and our team the opportunity to kind of return it. And it just kind of got out of hand. It didn't get out of hand, but I'm thinking, man, this is a ranked team that just came into Michie Stadium, and I didn't chew my fingernails at all. Like it was just ho hum. And then the guys did the same thing to Rutgers again, a ranked, awesome Big Ten opponent. They've just really raised the bar to have both of our teams ranked in the top 15 in the country, playing really well in the Patriot League. But, Army Navy, I'm excited. I'll be at the game at Michie Stadium with our women Saturday. We got a big contingency heading down to Annapolis. Anybody down in that part of the state or that part of the country, go watch our baseball team and our men's lacrosse team get after it down there.
Outstanding. Mike, thank you so much again for coming on. We really appreciate your time. This is always, one of the biggest episodes that we have of the year, and people are really interested to hear. So before we go, I'll give you a few minutes if you want to talk about anything that we didn't bring up.
Well, if this is your biggest episode, you guys need to work on your episode. I'm not used to being the top bill, man. Well, again, we got 30 varsity teams. All of them matter a lot. Not everybody's like all football all the time. We know it's important. We know it's the front porch of this academy. I'm glad you opened with the soup, because I'll tell you this, the commandant and the dean and myself as the soup's board of directors, I don't know that there's ever been a more cohesive group. I've got no excuses, because the dean and the comm are supporting what we're trying to do. They're still molding young men and women of character. They're not giving us a pass, but they're sure trying to find ways to allow us to stay competitive in this world of name, image, and likeness, and transfer portal, and 5th years of eligibility, and 6 years, and 7th years.
Mm-hmm.
Like 47 months for us is still 47 months. But the one thing that I say that resonates with all of them is, hey, kids come here to play their last 4 years of an organized sport, and they love that, and they want the opportunity to do it at the highest level, and they're allowing us to do that. And so when Matt Sherman wins a national championship, when our lacrosse programs are in the top 25, that's important. General McConville, the chief, says winning matters, and that's true. And they're giving us the opportunity to do it. So there's no excuses for us to not find ways to get it done. I appreciate the support that you guys do publicly and privately, covering our programs the way you do. It matters. We want to be relevant. So thanks for your help getting that done.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you very much. And I guess beat Navy.
Beat them.
Thanks for listening to the Ask for Football Army Football Show. Tune in next week as Ask for Football brings you more Army football analysis. We'd like to thank our sponsor, BuyerBarn.com. BuyerBarn is the world's first online platform for auctions and sales of farm animals. BuyerBarn is dedicated to helping small farmers in America and has extended special discounts to military veterans who want to continue the growth of the small farming industry. Go to BuyerBarn.com/military. That's BuyerBarn, BYREBARN.com to learn more, or to get started, email them at info@BuyerBarn.com. Thanks again for listening to the Army Football Show, and as always, beat Navy.